There you are.
Here I am.
Mitch Albom. Mitch Albom, ladies and gentlemen, is in the house.
In the house.
So, Mitch, I've got to say to you, Mitch and I are friends, and I'm a huge admirer of Mitch. I'm an admirer of him as a writer, as an advocate, as an activist, as a dad, as a guy. But this week, Mitch reached out to me and said, can we talk about my new book? Here it is, The Stranger in the Lifeboat. And it's a novel. And I said to him, Mitch, I would talk to you about anything. He said, well, you know, it's not the same when you bring a book out now. You have to kind of do more. Mitch, I just looked at the best-selling list, and you are #1. I thought I was here to help you. You're fine.
I think it's apparently the fact that I was going to be on with you that did that.
Yeah. Mitch, I'm so excited for you. I stayed up all night reading this book because I was like, I got to help Mitch. He doesn't have any help out there. I'm like, and I just looked at the list and you're #1. I was like, oh my.
Well, please don't hang up on me then, because I'm telling you, it was the fact that Maria Shriver was going to speak to me. I'm sure that people then said, well, there must be something to it.
My God, I ran right down to the bookstore to get the book. Ladies and gentlemen, he is #1. This book came out on Tuesday, 2 days ago, and it's spectacular. It's spectacular. You kept me up way too late. I've what do you call it? Tagged all these pages. But first of all, congratulations.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I wasn't aware. I knew that had happened a couple of days ago, but I didn't know that it was there now. So thank you everybody who's getting it. I don't know how that's happening, but I sure appreciate it, and thank you. And thank you for talking to me.
It's happening because people know that what you write resonates, that it'll be good, that it'll be thought-provoking. This book, as Mitch will say, The Stranger in the Lifeboat, it's basically about a ship, a very fancy ship with all the rich and famous people on it. It blows up, sinks, and then these people end up on a lifeboat, and there are 10 of them there on the lifeboat, and they find a stranger floating in the ocean that they welcome onto the boat, and the stranger announces himself to be God. And
that's it.
There's so many things I want to talk about this, but first of all, how did you get this idea that you wanted to do a lifeboat and that God would come to visit?
Well, honestly, Maria, a lot of people, a lot of writers, they think up sort of a plot first, and they would say, well, let me do something on a lifeboat. Let me say, God, what? In my case, I always just try to come up with an idea that I want to explore first. And so there wasn't a lifeboat. There wasn't anything. The idea was when we ask for help from God, from the universe, from whatever it is, why do we always want it to come like right then and there, like we're ordering a sandwich or something? And if it doesn't, then we're convinced that we didn't get what we wanted. And yet 5 years later, you look back on that moment where you thought you didn't get what you wanted, and you realize, well, if that hadn't happened, then this wouldn't have happened, and I wouldn't have met this person who I ended up marrying, and we had our family and our kids and all that. And you go, well, and how many times you say the sentence, that was the best thing that could have happened to me, right? Well, if it was the best thing that could have happened to you 5 years later, then maybe it was the best thing that could have happened to you then. It's just that when we ask for help, we think on our terms. We don't think of the universe's terms. We think of here now. So I thought, well, let me create a situation which was like the most dire situation you could think of, where you really expect like help's going to make a difference. And I thought, I always thought like the worst way to possibly die, Maria, not that I'm morbid about it, but the worst way to die would be in the middle of the ocean, because like there's, as if that's not bad enough, there's 100 different ways you can die. You can be eaten by a shark. You can be tumbled over by a wave.
Would you do let somebody get eaten by a shark?
Yes, there is a shark attack. Thanks for telling everybody there is a shark attack. And the waves throw you, and you could die of starvation. So I thought, well, let me put people out there, and then let me have them ask for help. Yeah. And then, well, let's have help arrive, because you're always saying, you know, God help me, God help me. So what if somebody shows up and says, okay, I'm here? And that's what this guy says when they pull him into the boat. He's very quiet. He says very few things. But they say to him, what are you doing here? If you're God, you know, they don't believe him because he's just this average looking schlubby guy, you know, nothing special about him. He does not have long brown hair and a beard and a manger story. And he says, well, haven't you been calling me? You know, it's like, what do you mean? What am I doing here? Haven't you?
I want to read what you say here when he comes and they're like, what were you doing in the water? The passengers say, and he says, coming to you. They look at one another and the guy says, let me get this straight. God decided to drop from the sky, swim to this raft and start talking to us. And he says, I talk to you all the time. I came here to listen. And they said, listen to what? But I came here to listen. I love that. I mean, as I said, I pushed down so many of the pages. Do you think that God is here and we're doing all the talking and none of the listening?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We do a lot of talking and very little listening. And I think in that passage, he came down and he said, I'm just going to listen to, how you deal with the fact that I'm here, and he wanted to, the 10 of them argue back and forth. 5 of them are like the rich guests, including the guy who owned the boat. He's like a multi-billionaire. He can't help but talk about his money. Even in the middle of like the most dire moments and a storm and everything, he says, you know how much money I made last year? And they're all going, who cares? He said, I made $8 billion last year. And so this God character wanted to listen to the interaction between, the rich people on the boat and the people who are workers on the boat, and how they kind of argue with one another over whether they think he's real or not. And so he was sort of, because I've always imagined, Maria, like, what would it be like if you got 5 minutes with God? What would it be like if I disappeared from the bottom half of this Instagram screen? Like, and all of a sudden a head popped back in and said, I just took Mitch away. I'm God. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. What do you want to ask me? And what would you say? What would the conversation be like? We all think we know what we want to ask God at that moment, but then all of a sudden he's actually in front of you. And as you can see in the book, it's not all, they're not genuflecting. They're not asking all big questions. Sometimes they go, because he says he's hungry and he says he's thirsty, and they start making fun of him. Oh, you're hungry, you're thirsty. God's hungry and thirsty. Oh, is there anything else we can do for you? That kind of thing. Yeah. And so it just made for an interesting dynamic between the people in the boat and this person who claims to be God, which, by the way, I'm not saying he is. You've read the whole book, but I'm not saying he is or he isn't or something else doesn't happen. I'm just saying that's the premise.
But somebody said, ask me again, is the name of the book? The book is called The Stranger in the Lifeboat. This is the cover. It is out now, and that's the name of the book. But people were saying, I want to thank him for, they're telling people, or saying what they would like to say to God. But he has a great line in here, God. The distance between death and life is not as great as you imagine.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, Mitch? I underlined that line.
So the first person who said that to me was Maury Schwartz. That's the first time I ever heard that line. Maury was, of course, dying from ALS, at Maury of Tuesdays with Maury. And towards the end, he said, I'm starting to think that the distance between life and death may not be as great as we think. That we think it's like you just go to, it's got no connection to here and nothing. And he said, what if it's just a tiny little step and a different step in your consciousness? Isn't that possible too? And I thought, why not? Of course it's possible. And so I put that in the mouth of this God character, along with other, like, I tried to think of the questions like that people would ask. And of course, I'm joking around. People have asked me since this came out, well, what's it like, to write in the voice of God sometimes? And I say, you do like this. Because you want to make sure, like, there's not a lightning bolt going to hit your computer and blow it up, and how dare you. So I'm not supposing that I have the answers. I'm just incorporating some of the wisdom that I've heard and learned over life from some very smart people like Maury and other older people in my life. So, for example, they asked him at one point, do you answer every prayer? And he says, I answer all prayers, but sometimes the answer is no. And, we never want to accept that the answer could be no, but sometimes what we pray for runs afoul of what somebody else might be praying for. To give a simple example, you've seen sporting events where, when they win, say, I just want to give credit to God. God was on our side today. Well, then was God against the other team? So sometimes the things we want, maybe the answer has to be no, or not for now, or whatever. So I put that answer. And there was another one where a very big question that we asked the universe or the divine, whatever you happen to believe in. You remember there's a moment where one of the passengers, in the middle of the night, he takes his own life. He throws himself overboard because he's distraught over his wife died. He wants to be with her, and he's not afraid. He's not afraid of dying. This character has given him like hope, and he takes his own life in the middle of the night. When the other ones wake up, he's gone. And one of the passengers gets extremely angry with the God character, and he says, did you know about that? He said, well, I know all things. I said, well, then, why didn't you stop it? If you were really God, you would have stopped it. And he says, God starts things, man stops them, And I thought a lot about that, because we're always saying, well, I can't believe in God because if God exists, then how are there wars? If God exists, then how come people shoot one another?
Right.
If God exists, then how come, people die of alcoholism? And you realize we create all those things. I think we have everything in this world, honestly, Maria, to make it the most perfect paradise. We could solve hunger in a week if we really devoted our resources to it. And there wouldn't be a hungry person on this planet. We could solve any disease. Look at what we did with a vaccine in a year when we put the world's attention to it. You don't think that we could get cancer if we really, really wanted to get rid of it? And so I think we have all those tools, but we're the ones who invent guns, invent bombs, invent wars, invent cigarettes, invent alcohol, invent reasons to hate one another. And we're the ones who stop a lot of the things that God got started. So there's a lot of moments like that in the book that I, get to put some
love that. Read that line again. I say that line again, Mitch, that God says, I'm the one, humans are the ones that...
God starts things, man stops them.
That's such a powerful concept. I thought you brought up a question, like people get super angry in their relationship with the divine, right?
Yeah.
And understandable for so many of the things that go on in their lives, whether they lose a child or they go through a divorce or there's a war, and people say, what kind of God could be out there? How would you describe your own relationship with God? It's gone. You've asked for some prayers and they haven't been answered, as have I. And how do you keep your faith intact, even to the point where you want to write about this and have people talk about it and think about it?
Yeah, well, okay, right here, our little girl, Chica, who you see over here.
Right.
Okay, so
this is one of the young girls that Mitch, that you adopted, right?
Yes. Then I wrote a book about the experience. She had a brain tumor, and
right.
We brought her to America to get her operated on, and thought that we'd bring her right back, and she never left. She became our daughter. We spent 2 years traveling around the world trying to find a cure for her DIPG, which is what she had. And in the end, she died. But we had 2 amazing years with her that they predicted we wouldn't have. They said she would be dead in 4 months. So there's a character in the book. You asked me, how do I do that in this book? Well, there's a character in the book, the police inspector, who finds this raft a year later. The story's told in 3 different time periods. Right. One of those is a year after the boat exploded, and the raft washes up on a shore of a Caribbean island all the way across the Atlantic, which means it would have had to float all the way across it, which it can do, by the way. And so he finds the raft, but it's empty. There's nobody in it. And he's the first one to get to it, and he opens a pouch, and there's this notebook, and inside the notebook is the story of these 10 people and this supposed person who thinks he's God. And he's reading it, and the reason he ends up reading it is because in the book he lost a child too. He lost a little girl, and it's not a big stretch to kind of know that his character is sort of me. And he has lost his faith totally. His attitude is there's no such thing as a God, a benevolent God who can't be benevolent to a 4-year-old girl. And he had no use for religion, no use for faith, nothing. And over the course of the book, as he reads this notebook and he starts to see some of the interactions that this character has, he starts to soften up. And there's one moment in the book that kind of does this, that is the answer to your question. One of the characters on the boat is mourning his wife, in his case his wife, and he's crying, and he says to the God character, why did you take my wife? Why do people die, essentially? And the God character says, I know that you shed tears on earth when your loved ones die. but I can assure you they're not crying. And it took me years to kind of get to that. I mean, it's only now 4.5 years since Chica died. I didn't feel that way in the first couple of years, but I realize now that she isn't crying. We cry for her. My wife and I cry for her and not being here, and even looking at her pictures, but she's not crying. She's not in pain. She's not. And if you believe in anything after this life, then you believe that you're not going to be crying there. And so that offered me some comfort. And that's how I kind of came back to an idea of faith. You know, I never lost faith in the fact, like, I don't believe anything exists. There's nothing. I never got that deep, but I was angry and frustrated but I think it's okay to be angry with the universe. You know, it's okay to debate it. There's a moment in there where one of the characters says, you know, I have a lot of doubts or something, and the God character says, I'm quite used to doubt.
Yeah.
And they and they say, doesn't that bother you? And he says, no, a lot of people end up, you know, coming to me after all that doubt. So you know, he's kind of a weird character to be playing God. He looks like a surfer, and he gets hungry a lot, and he falls asleep a lot, and he makes some jokes, you know, some corny jokes, and he gets angry too. So, you know, I try to throw you off a little.
Yeah, I think what's so, you know, kind of universal in here is the doubt, you know, the passengers on the boat. And I don't want to spoil too much because I think everybody should go out and get it. As I said, it's a super easy read, and it just like unfolds in real time. I told Mitch I won't be able to read the book before we have a chance to talk. And of course I didn't. I was like, reach right through it. But I think you know, where God, we want somebody to prove who they are. You know, they want all the passengers on here, like, oh, if you're God, do something to make us believe. You show us. We won't have the faith that you are who you say you are. You have to prove it. Yeah. And that's kind of a big overarching, I think, theme in the world today. Prove it. Prove who you are, that we don't have faith and we just don't believe. Were you trying to bring that kind of to the forefront of people's thinking?
Yeah, you know, that's a really astute observation. And I was, there's an exchange between two of the passengers, one of them who believes that this guy is who he says he is, and the other one who doesn't. And the one who doesn't says to him, they like go off to the side of the raft, and they go, wait a minute, like, you really believe this guy? And he says, yeah, I kind of do. Why, don't you? And he says, no, look at him. That's his response. Look at him. And the other guy says, well, wait a minute. Aren't we always saying, like, if we could only see God, then we could believe in him, you know, but we can't see him, so we can't believe him. Now we apparently have somebody to see, and you're going to say you don't believe in him because he doesn't look like the way you thought he would look. He doesn't look like Gandalf with the white hair and the robes, or he doesn't look like Jesus, or he doesn't look like... So we make up all these reasons, like, prove it. And even if somebody was right in front of you, or right in front of us, we still doubt things. But the point I'm trying to make is, I've now lived long enough to look back on my life and see the moments where I had my biggest doubts, my biggest anger, my biggest howling at the moon over things. And I see now how it fits into the whole picture of my life. And it makes sense. And there's almost, you know how Einstein, I think it was Einstein, once said, like, he didn't believe in God until he studied, you know, the body, when it said there's no other explanation for this thing called a human being than a divine intervention. This could not have been done by nature or science. It had to be done by... Well, I kind of feel that way about, like, my life and other people's lives too. Like, when you look at it in the totality, it all makes sense. When this happened, I got better as a result of it. When this happened, I didn't want, when Tuesdays with Maury began, I didn't really want to go spend one day a week sitting alongside a dying old man. My frame of mind at that point was go, career. You know, I wanted just to get bigger and bigger in my career, and I'm going to give up one day a week to do it. It's kind of out of guilt at the beginning. And I look back on it now and I go, that wasn't me making that decision. The universe was saying, this is what you need. You need to slow down. You need to change your direction. And you're going to go do this even though you don't like it, because in the end, this is going to make you a better person. And now I look back and I said, how could I I possibly not want it to go, right?
I love that, but you had to listen. And I think that comes back to the line that we want. I think people are always like, God, tell me what to do, show up now, fix the situation.
Yeah.
But the listening isn't usually a part of it. And so we all have to kind of slow down to listen. And then obviously those, you could sit back and go, had you not gone and done that with, you know, that we would never have had Tuesdays with Maury, right? You would never have gone off on the trajectory that you went off with, etc.
I wouldn't be talking to you.
Yeah, you'd be talking to me.
No, we met over Tuesdays with Maury. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, in Sun Valley, we were talking about doing something with Tuesdays with Maury. So I never would have met you if not that. So look at all the amazing things that happened out of something that I didn't really want to do at the beginning. I think and it's not me. I mean, I only bring that up because it's an example. I'm sure everyone who's listening to us or attenuating this has something in their life that they can point to and say, well, you know, now that I think about it, I didn't want to do that either, but it turned out to be a really good thing for me.
You also include in kind of some of the people in the Lifeboat that they're from Haiti, which I know is near and dear to your heart. Mitch and I have spoken several times about his work in Haiti. And it brings me back to that point where you were saying, you know, if we really wanted to cure cancer, we would. If we really wanted to cure hunger in this country, we would. Do you have that same belief if we, the United States, or a collaboration of other countries really wanted to heal Haiti, we could?
Well, we could put it on a right path. I don't think it's any other nation's job ultimately to cure an independent nation. That has to be done by itself. But right now, Haiti is crying out for help. It is crying out for help. Maria, I can't tell you how dangerous it is down there. And our kids have not been outside in almost 2 years. They haven't left our little third of an acre property because it's too dangerous to take them out in any capacity. The kidnapping is rampant on the street. We don't have fuel right now. A couple of minutes before I talked to you, I was talking to our on-site Haitian director who said, the only fuel I can get, they want to charge us $10 a gallon for, you know, versus 3 or 4 that we were paying a few weeks ago, because nobody will drive on the roads. The fuel trucks won't drive on the road. So it becomes a black market economy. That's going to cost us $5,000 just to fill up our generator, which we have to do because we only get electricity 10 hours a day. And what are we going to do the other 10 hours? We won't even have lights if we don't do it. This is what daily life is like for average, forget about our orphanage, average Haitians on the street. People who make $2, $3 a day are being kidnapped and held for ransom for $10 or $20. It's a city, especially Port-au-Prince, where the police have been neutered. The president's been assassinated. There's nobody really running the government, and no one is really stepping in to help. And I don't know how much more dire a situation has to get before countries say, okay, we need to do something about this. You know, and for people, I know it's popular to say, well, we can't save everybody and we can't help everybody. And obviously that's true. But I point out again, Haiti and America are not just accidental neighbors. It's an hour off of our shores by airplane off of Florida. We spent almost 20 years occupying Haiti in the early and mid 20th century. We were the government. We wrote their constitution. Their money was in our banks. We are intertwined with the history of Haiti. And we do have an obligation to help that country. And I wish that we would. It's not right for our kids or any kids that you can't even go out to play soccer in a field across the way because you're worried about something happening to you between here and there.
So it's kind of like Haiti is in this lifeboat, right? Haiti is in this crying out for help, and those pleas are kind of falling on deaf ears, in your opinion.
Also, the 2 Haitians in the book are the most faithful people. Yeah. And you know, I wrote a lot of this book down in Haiti because, you know, I go there every month. And so I was writing, you know, I'm sitting there. I have to sit outside to write because I don't have a desk anywhere inside or anything. So I'm sitting outside. And of course, once you're sitting writing, the kids just swarm up and they come up. What are you doing, Mr. Mitch? I'm working on my book. What's the name of the book, Mr. Mitch? The Stranger in the Lifeboat. Who is the stranger in the lifeboat, Mr. Mitch? I said, okay, listen, you got to just read it. Okay. So I printed it out and I gave it to them. And our kids really read well. I mean, they love to read. I just wrote, a thing on my bulletin thing on Facebook, the whole thing about reading at our orphanage and how it's so precious because there is no TV and there is no computer and there is no iPhone and there is no anything else. So if you bring a book down, I mean, kids are tugging at it like a wishbone, they want to read it. They want to read it first. And so they ran off and read the manuscript before I turned it in. And they actually had some really good ideas. Like I made a few changes as a result of what they did. And the Today Show collected some of their reviews. They got some on camera and they reviewed the book and they put it in a little montage of the kids at the orphanage reviewing my book. And fortunately, it was mostly positive reviews.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, Mitch, let me ask you, because people can donate to Mitch's charity, but can you also, do you need books? Do you want people to send books? Is that something that is helpful?
Well, they have to be the appropriate kind of books, obviously, for children and teen. And sometimes what we consider teen fiction is a little over the edge for some of our kids. But yeah, I mean, they can go to havefaithhaiti.org and it's all there as to how you can make donations. And if you want to donate books, messaging that you can write to our people and how we could arrange to, ship some stuff down there and all. I mean, we only have 1/3 of an acre. And I know you have a lot of followers, so I got to be careful because we're kind of tight on space. I don't want I don't want to be stacks of books everywhere we go, but we could use whatever help, any kind of help, really.
So people can go to havefaithhaiti.org. We just put it up, and as Mitch was just saying, they need money to run the generator. They need all kinds of donations. You can also follow Mitch on Bulletin, where he writes every week about what's going on at his orphanage, and he writes kind of from the front lines of what's going on down there. If you're interested in subscribing to that or knowing more about it, which behooves us all to know more about it. I find so many people talk and they don't know anything about it. They don't even know that we were there in the first place, or as you said, wrote the Constitution or had any involvement. And so we don't do a good job of keeping our citizens up to date on these stories, right? They seem to just kind of pop in from nowhere, and the media doesn't explain this is why people might be thinking the United States should have some involvement there. It's not like it's just out of thin air.
Right. It's not just me, railing because I have an orphanage there. It's
So I want to remind people about the work Mitch is doing there, and I think we want to help keep him now in first place on Amazon. There, Mitch Albom's going to be on the New York Times bestseller, "The Stranger in the Lifeboat." It's really, really good. It has great reviews on the back, but most important, you'll enjoy it. It'll make you think. There's a lot of lines in there that you'll underline and you can use in your daily conversation. Not far between life and death. I'm going to use that at the dinner table. Maybe tonight.
You have some serious dinners going there. Wow.
I do.
We usually just say pass the French fries, but that's some heavy
stuff.
No,
not at my dinner table. We talk about stuff like this. So I'm going to talk to my boys tonight about this and ask them whether they think that line is true, and have they actually ever thought about that line. And then we're going to talk about, would you know if God appeared to you? What do you think he or she would look like?
Right. Remember that song, "What if God were one of us, just a slob like one of us, trying to a stranger on the bus, trying to get home"?
Yeah,
you never know. Yeah.
I think there's so much in here to think about. I thought I was going to help you get there, but now you're just there all by yourself.
I'm telling you, you're the reason why, Maria. So don't discount. This is as soon as this. All I can tell you is, as soon as this went out there that I was going to talk to you, that's when this happened. So must be you.
Okay, Mitch, you keep spinning that yarn and I'll keep promoting you. But we'll put this up in the Sunday paper. This is going to be our recommend of the week. Mitch Albom. The book is "The Stranger in the Lifeboat." You'll think about faith. You'll think about whatever you believe in. You'll think about life and death. And you'll check yourself to kind of think about like how people show up in your life and whether you actually believe who they are or they don't. I'm not going to say anything more. Mitch Albom, thank you for your work on the front lines of humanity. Your work in Detroit. I said to my son, he goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to talk to my friend Mitch from Detroit." And he said, "Oh yeah, I know you have that guy, that friend of yours up there." I was like, "Yeah."
Well, I'm proud to consider you my friend too, Maria, in New York or wherever you are at the
I'm in
moment.
LA now, but I'm everywhere.
LA, okay. But you're Detroit's friend and Haiti's friend, and thank you for sharing my story with all your followers, and thank
Always.
all of you who have been sending these messages through. It's really very kind of you, and I'm happy to return the favor anytime.
God bless you, Mitch. Congratulations, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See ya. Okay, everybody, remember The Stranger in the Lifeboat. I'll put it up right here. Mitch Albom, let's keep him #1. He's a really great man, really, really good man. And I don't say that about a lot of people, but he is really great. Beautiful writer, beautiful spirit. His books are just a gift. So if you're looking for a good gift to bring for Thanksgiving to someone's house, if you're looking for a good present, or if you're just looking for a great read yourself, he is a beautiful, beautiful writer and a beautiful, beautiful man trying to make a difference in, he's not trying to make a difference. He's actually making a huge difference in Haiti and in Detroit as well. So he's really great because he works in his hometown and he works overseas. He's really a global citizen and a man of deep faith and deep conviction. So thank you all so much for joining us today for that conversation, which was above the noise, which I hope will make you think, will inspire you, and will uplift you. That's the goal. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.